Home prices have just gone up for the first time in months in the Denver metro area. Why? What does this mean if you're trying to buy a home in 2023? What does this mean if you're trying to sell your home in 2023? We're gonna break that down, we're gonna get into some stats, and I wanna start with interest rates. So interest rates tells a big part of the story. It paints a big portion of the picture as to where the real estate economy is as a whole. And so let's talk about the brief history of interest rates as it pertains to once the pandemic started and kind of where we are now. So when the pandemic started, in an effort to avoid economic collapse, the Fed lowered interest rates on mortgages, and they were down to, at their lowest, it was interest rates in the twos, which is unheard of, historically low interest rates. Again, to encourage people, incentivize people to go out and buy and spend money to avoid an economic collapse. Now, what did this do? With so many buyers in the market, it caused demand like crazy. Not to mention, the world is different now. Now you have work from home, hybrid positions, much more accepted and available. So people started relocating. They no longer needed to live in downtown Los Angeles or in New York or in Chicago, these more expensive states, and they could relocate to other locations. Now you have interest rates that have dropped. You have the ability to really be more flexible in terms of where you live and where you can work from. It caused a housing market boom that we hadn't seen and really was sustained for a long period of time. You'd put your house on the market, it would sell right away. Buyers were getting record low interest rates, so they had more buying power than ever. And what happened now is inflation numbers started to creep up, and we've heard a lot about inflation lately. With inflation numbers creeping up, the Fed now had to raise the interest rates, and so you went from being in the high twos, low threes, to now you went all the way up to 7% at its highest. And this was a gradual thing that happened over the summer last year, which is why the housing market started to cool and realign and reshift starting kind of summertime last year. Fast forward to where we are today. From September was the last month there was appreciation in homes. Since September, home prices have been dropping. Now, they haven't been dropping absolutely drastically, right, to where a point where you're calling it a market crash or anything like that. And some of it was seasonal as well. As you enter the winter months, fall months, people don't move as much. Some of it is seasonal, and some of it was just the market kind of cooling all the way back down. And where we are at now, home prices have gone up. They went up 4.31%. From January to February. So now let's break down some of the stats for the month of February, actual number stats. I'm not a math wizard, so I do need the numbers here in front of me. But just to go over some of the basic stats, active listings at the end of the month, there were 3,778 active listings at the end of February. There were 2,661 closed transactions at the end of February. Days in market, so if you list a home, how long does it sit on the market before it sells, was at 49 days, just to give you an idea. About a year ago, when the market was at its peak, homes were on the market for a few days, 4, 5, 6, if even that. And the detached sale price average for the Denver metro area was $731,318. Again, that is up 4.31% month over month from the month of January. So again, where we're at right now is the reason for that. One, we're actually are seeing some activity pick up, and that days in markets at 49 is actually a little bit misleading, because when you get this big boom in activity, which happened kind of towards the middle of February from what we're seeing, that number takes some time for it to come back and adjust, since you have 30 days until you close. Right? So that number is actually a little bit misleading, because we're seeing some properties right now that are going up on the first weekend and getting multiple offers and selling within that first weekend. It depends on the location, it depends on the marketing, and this is really where it pays to have a good agent, such as myself. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're more strategic than you were before. We'll get into what exactly this means for sellers here in just a bit, but I want to continue to talk a little bit more about the real estate market as a whole. So you hear a lot in the news about numbers being compared to what they were 12 months ago, and the percentage drops. And whenever you hear drop in housing market, that's not a good mix, right? But that stuff sells. What really is happening in the real estate market right now is things are starting to pick back up. Part of that is because rates have stabilized a little bit over the last few months. As of today, they're actually in the mid sixes, down from when they were at the peak of sevens. So we're seeing a little bit more stability in the interest rates. And what we're also seeing is, again, the seasonal change into where people do start moving. Once it starts warming up a little bit more, we start to see more listings. So a combination of those things, that's why the home prices are increasing. Again, it is very location specific because you are seeing some homes, like I mentioned earlier, that are going in that first weekend and being sold, multiple offers. Granted, it's not 50,000 over ask like it was last year. It's usually maybe at ask or slightly over. So again, these kind of hot markets. And then you're still seeing though some areas where homes are sitting. When you look at Green Valley Ranch, that is one of, if not the coldest areas in the entire Denver metro area, and you have plenty of inventory out there. And if a home is not staged properly, or the photos don't, the photos don't do it justice, or it just doesn't show well, it's overpriced, those houses are also sitting on the market. So the opportunity for deals is still there. But if you're looking for something that's more turnkey, maybe a nice remodel, and it's priced competitively well, you might run into some competition. It's not impossible, but you might run into some competition depending on where you want to live. So the real estate market, again, as a whole, very interesting. You're seeing some hot, you're still seeing some cold, but we are heading into our kind of busy season over the next several months. Now let's get into what that means for buyers and sellers. So for buyers, this a little bit of a drop in interest rates and now a little bit more stability is reaffirming, right? Although the interest rates aren't where they were a year ago, at the end of the day, they are still fairly close to historical lows when you're looking back at a span of 20, 30 years. Now, they're not great, don't get me wrong. In the Denver metro area, we have an affordability crisis as a whole, which the elections are actually that are going to take place are talking about this a lot, so we'll talk more about that. But as a buyer, again, what you're seeing right now is you might run into some multiple offer situations for a house that's turnkey, ready to go. You're seeing a little bit more stability in interest rates. I would say check out new build homes. New builders right now are still offering really, really great incentives. I just got a new build under contract here recently, and the new build was able to offer some really fantastic incentives that made it really, really amazing for my first-time home buyers to get under contract and bring little cash to close. So new builds still have some really great incentives. It's not crazy there like it was before. But you're seeing a little bit more balance. That may change over the next several months, but we'll see. That's where it stands right now. Now for sellers, what does this mean for sellers? And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but this is extremely important to list your property correctly and list it right the first time. I preach this all the time, and I'm still seeing things on the market that they're taking pictures with an iPhone, it looks terrible, or they're way overpriced, or they're using comps from 12 months ago when it was a completely different market. It takes a lot more skill to sell a home in today's market, but it still can be done. If it's done right, it still can be done quickly. And really, if you do it right the first time, you sell it faster and for more money. And if you're selling right now, these things matter more now than ever, at least over the last several years. So do your research, hire a good agent. If you have to interview multiple, do it, but hire a good agent, because right now a difference between a good agent and a bad agent can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. It really can. So hire a good agent, but if you want to sell your home, that opportunity is still there to do it fairly quickly. I mean, technically, demand-wise, we still have so little inventory and such high demand that we are still technically in a seller's market. Right now, we're hovering about, I believe it was 1 month of inventory. You need to have 6 months of inventory to be able to consider it a balanced market. So it's still a seller's market. If you want to sell it, there's still options there, but just be particular about how you do it. To wrap it all up, again, the real estate market right now, I am speaking specifically for the Denver metro area. This does not apply to what's happening with the rest of the country. Some areas in the country are really struggling. Some areas have rebounded and have bounced back, even after the interest rates have gone up. So you really will have to look at what's happening in your specific area. I mean, it can be as specific as one condo building versus another, or one side of the street versus another, or one subdivision over from the other. I mean, it can be that specific when you're looking at stats and how they can vary. So be very specific about where you're looking and where you're getting your information from. And if there's anything more that you want to get into detail, again, the purpose of this is to keep it a little bit more high level, a little bit more general. If you want to get into detail about what this means for you or your home specifically, reach out, we can talk. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day.